Hi everyone, I'm Lisa and welcome to Lisa's Stamp Studio. Today's card is using an extremely popular stamp set called This Little Piggy. And I've got a fun pointed angle cut for you that I'm excited to share. Here's the card. In addition to the angle cut, I'm going to be teaching you some really fun masking techniques as well. Don't forget, you can find all the cutting dimensions, pictures, and supplies over on my blog. If you click right here at the I button, if you're here from YouTube, it'll take you directly to my blog post where you can find all of those things nice and easy. While you're there, check out my online classes tab. I've got 2 fun ways for you to stamp with me from home. Let's head over to the stamp table and let's get started. Here's a good close-up of the card we're going to be creating today. Isn't this adorable? This fun cut is really easy to create. I think you're going to be amazed. And remember, no 2 of these are going to be alike, depending on where you decide that the point is going to be. And I'll explain that to you in a little bit. If you look at this stamp, you're going to notice that the greeting is actually part of the image. And I'm going to show you a fun masking technique so that you can actually utilize them separately. So let's go ahead and get started. I'm going to bring over my paper trimmer because we're going to score the cardstock first before we use it. And the cutting dimensions for today's card are going to be over on my blog. If you're here from YouTube, just click on the I button here in the upper corner and you'll be able to access this blog post very easily. It'll take you right to it so you don't have to hunt. 5.5 inches is my halfway point and I am going to score. I find on a piece of paper this long, if I just try to bend it, I'm going to get some cracking and creasing here. That's really not very favorable. I'm going to set that aside. And I've brought in another piece of Whisper White cardstock. This time I'm actually going to be doing some cutting. I found that if I made a small tick mark at about the 2 3/4 inch mark, the trimmer here at the bottom has a ruler on it. This little black strip has a crease down the center, which is where the blade travels. That's actually like 0 if you were going to line up the measuring. So you can see that this is 4 inches wide. About 2 3/4 of an inch is actually where I made a tick mark. That's where I decided that I wanted to actually use as my point. Now keep in mind that I did flip this over because I'm going to be cutting and marking from the back. How deep or how shallow you go on the sides is completely up to you. But again, keeping in mind that this is going to be flipped over. So I'm going to put that little dot, I know it's really difficult to see, that little tiny dot right where my fingernail is going to be lined up on the track of the cutting blade. And then I can manipulate how shallow or how deep I want this to be by manipulating the paper. So you know that the blade's going to travel right down here. So I'm going to just guess and say that's good. Again, no 2 are alike. And then on this side, I'm now putting the dot inside the track here, and then I'm going to cut another angle. Again, or as deep or as shallow as you like is completely up to you. And no 2 of these are going to be alike. So now I'm going to flip it over. Okay, so my pencil mark is on the back. Here comes our stamped image. I'm going to use basic black ink. I'm going to get that ready. And we want to mask that off. Now there's a couple ways. You can use Scotch tape. And in that case, that actually might be really handy simply because of the direction of the stamp. But I had trouble getting around this little curve here, which is the stem and the flower. So I'll tell you what I did. I took a Post-it note and I ripped. The sticky part at the top is what I use to mask off the words. So I'm going to hold this like so, and I'm going to line this up. And you can see that I'm really close here by his foot, and I'm close here by the flower. If you think you're a little bit too close, rip a little bit away. I found this easier to use only because the Scotch tape was really straight. And I couldn't get around these little curved images. I'm going to leave a little bit long so I have something to hold on to. I'm going to bring my ink pad in. And you're going to notice that I'm actually going to turn and twist very gently because I don't want to reposition the Post-it note. All right, and then you can see that it's inked. I'm going to very carefully remove this piece here. I'm going to move my paper over. And I'm going to stamp my little pig right here in the point of my card. Firm, even pressure. and a lift. So now we have our image. I've cut a small piece of Whisper White cardstock to house the greeting, and now I'm going to use my black marker to color in just the words. So I've got the word happy. You're going to notice too that I'm using my marker almost on its side. You always want to preserve the tip, so never color this way. So I'm coloring from the side, and where you can't seem to reach, turn your stamps to make it easier for you. I'm right-handed, so anything from the left to right is easier for me. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and color that in. When you're finished, because the ink dries very, very quickly, you're going to want to huff on it. And I call this the Darth Vader. And that's going to re-moisten the ink so that you can go ahead and get this right on top of your banner. Firm, even pressure. And we're going to lift that right off. If you are going to make multiples of these, you're going to want to be very, very careful because, again, you're going to get a little bit of a halo. Do you see that right here? That halo image of the leftover ink because it's pigmented so strong. All right, so let's move on to the rest of the card. Really important before this next step that you have your ink dry. The one thing about this basic black archival ink is it's a tad slower to dry, which means it can create quite a mess if you're going to do some watercoloring, which is what we're going to do. I love the Flirty Flamingo for this little pig. It's perfect. Now we made these ink pads flexible so that if you squeeze from the back, it's going to press a small well of ink from the pad to the inside of the cover, making it easy for you to pick up and do some watercoloring. I always like to squeeze my aqua painter to make sure that it's not too wet. And then I've got a little paper towel off over there to the side. I want to make sure it's not too sopping wet. This is a fairly new aqua painter, and I found that it's really juicy, really wet. The other thing is I'm not using watercolor paper. So you want to do this quickly, and you don't want to go over an area too much, or the paper is going to pill on you, and it's going to look like it's got little fibers coming up and it's all bumpy. Sometimes on our projects though, that can be kind of an added little bonus. And if you want to go back over it, just make sure that you let it dry before you do so, because you don't want to oversaturate this paper because it's not made specifically for that reason. So I'm going to leave this for now. I'm going to hold this over my Stampin' Scrub. I've got a rag here just to kind of give you an idea. I hold it over my scrub and I do wet to run the color through the bristles. And then, of course, I just give it a little pinch so that it's not too saturated. I'm going to switch over now to the crumb cake, doing the exact same thing. Here's my ink, and I'm going to do a little bit of that ground. I decided that mine was actually going to be dirt because I haven't seen too many pigs out in a really grassy field. So I'm just going to go ahead and give him a little color down here at the bottom. Again, if you want it darker, you might want to wait so you don't get that piling. I'm cleaning my brush right off camera, again squeezing it, and then making sure that it's not too saturated. I am actually going to use a little pinch on my bristles. I'm now taking the lemon lime twist, and I'm going to do the exact same thing. I'm going to squeeze that. Got a nice well of color there. And I've got a couple sprigs inside that lawn that I'm actually going to give a little bit of color to. So I'm going to color that in. This nice, bright, vibrant color is going to add just a little bit of credence to that background that we're going to do. Cleaning that off camera one more time, and then I'm pinching that. And then make sure all my bristles are together because now I'm actually going to cap it and store it. You want to make sure that those bristles come to a nice point so those little hairs don't come out the sides for when you go to use it next time. Going to let this sit and dry, and while it's doing that, I am coming back over to this banner piece. We're going to want to create a banner tip on our banner. So we're going to do that by creating a slit right in the center of the left side of the paper. That slit is going to guarantee that you're going to have a pretty even banner tip every single time. So I'm cutting from the outside edge to the center of the banner tip, and I'm doing the exact same thing on this side from here to here. So now we've got our banner tip. Coming back to the card, we're going to use a couple markers. I wanted to do a little bit of coloring on this flower, but I didn't want it to be watercolored. I want it to stand out a little bit. So I've got Daffodil Delight for the center of my daisy, and I'm going to leave the flower itself white. And I've got the coordinating marker to the lemon lime twist. And I'm very gently going to go over the stem through his hand and then color in the leaf. I just wanted to make that stand out a little bit because of the designer paper that we're going to use. And that is from the Eastern Palace Suite. Isn't it pretty? So this was the base of the card that we originally scored, and now I'm using my bone folder. I like a nice crisp crease. This is going to get mounted here on the base of our card, so I'm going to flip that over and add some adhesive here to the back side. The one thing about that Eastern Palace paper, it's really versatile and it's beautiful. All right, so I'm going to leave a little bit of a border around the card. I'm going to line that up here. And remember this panel, or this is where we're going to add some ribbon. I've cut myself 2 pieces of the Lemon Lime Twist ombre ribbon. Oh, it's so pretty. Darker at the bottom, lighter at the top. Comes in several colors, and I've cut it just a little over 4 inches long. My first piece I'm actually going to tack down on the card. So I'm going to grab some glue dots, and I'm going to use it on the raw end. So I'm going to put one here and one here. I do not wrap my ribbon around the side that you can't see. I find that's just a waste. That's just a Lisa thing. But if you go all the way around and tie, that's totally fine. This saves me literally at least 5 or 6 inches of ribbon on every single card, and that can add up over time when you stamp as much as I do. So I'm going to add those raw ends to the back. This piece is going to come up underneath, and all I'm going to do is tie it. And it's going to look like I went all the way around, but I really didn't. So I'm going to slide that up in there and just make a single knot and pull it tightly so it's nicely cinched. You can actually train your ribbon to lay the way you want to. Just pull it in the direction you want it to lay. And then I'm going to use my paper snips here to cut nice angled tips on that ribbon to make it look finished. All right. Now, if yours is doing this, it's boinging a little bit and you're afraid about it slipping, I'm just going to show you a tip. I know this is not going anywhere, but here's a glue dot and here's my paper piercing tool. I'm actually taking this glue dot, look, and I'm folding it in half. So it's kind of gotten like long and round. And then what I can do is I can come right up underneath here and I can press and I can tack it right down in place. So there's another great tip for you in case you have that problem. The greeting is here. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to grab my dimensionals. I'm going to take 2 of those. I'm going to put one near the end and then one here at the other end. Take off that paper backing. And I'm going to mount it right here underneath the ribbon, flush with my side. Okay, so now I've got my layer. Now one more thing before I get too far. Do you notice this? Do you see the shadow around my pig? It's a light gray color. You don't have to do it, but I want to show you how. I'm using this smoky slate pad. I'm squeezing from the back. So we've got a little bit of ink in our well once again, just like we did with our watercoloring. So remember the aqua painter, so we have that. I'm making sure that it's not too wet. I'm taking it here, but I'm also making sure that it's lighter. So I'm taking it all the way over here. And you are lightly going to go around your image. The less ink that you put on, believe it or not, when it dries, it actually shows up a little bit better. So you don't want to be too heavy-handed with this. You also want to make sure that the previous colors are nice and dry so that you don't let them bleed together. So we've got a little bit of an outline going on here. And again, I'm making sure that I'm using it here on the side where it's really watered down and light. I want to make sure my gray isn't too predominant. And believe it or not, I did go around my flower. By outlining like this, it actually pushes your image forward and makes it look like it's more in the foreground than in the background. So that's just a little coloring tip for you, just in case you like to watercolor like I do. All right, now we're ready to mount him to the base of the card. I'm going to flip that over. I did use dimensionals. If you want to use foam adhesive strips, you sure can. I've worked out the math on a previous card, and it actually is exactly the same. But I just happen to have dimensionals handy, so we're going to place those in some strategic areas here. The great thing about dimensionals is because they are octagon shape, you actually have a side that has a nice straight edge. So you can manipulate that to go right against your edges. I'm going to put one more over here. And I'm actually going to put a couple in the center just to brace the card when it goes through the postage meter. So I'm going to take off the paper backing by peeling up the edges. And if you have any that are having difficulty getting the paper off, there's always at least a couple that I have trouble with. And then here we are on the base of our card. This piece is cut the same width as the designer paper. So you're going to want to make sure that you've got a good alignment before you press too hard. So we've got to make sure here and here that they line up. And it looks good. So we're going to give that a gentle rub from the back. And there is our Piggy card. Isn't he cute? So here's the one we've made today, the one I made before you joined me. I'm so glad you're here. Head over to my blog, click on that information button to get there quickly. And while you're there, check out my online classes tab, 2 ways for you to stamp with me from home. So glad you joined me today, everyone. I look forward to seeing you next time. Have a great day.